We often think that intelligence is all about the big things, right? Like amazing test scores or a fancy job title. But what if the real story, the thing that actually matters, is hidden in all the small, everyday moments? Well, today, we're going to dig into the hidden habits that are quietly building or, breaking our intellects.
And that right there is the core idea. It's not about the grand gestures. It's about those small, almost invisible things you do over and over again every single day. These are the habits that are truly carving out your cognitive patterns.
And here's the kicker. We're not just talking about bad habits that kind of make you look less intelligent. No, we're talking about processes that, over time, are literally physically changing the structure of your brain. They're making it less efficient, less curious, and frankly, just not as sharp.
All right, so let's start with our first category. Those lazy shortcuts our minds love to take when they're supposed to be processing information. These are the internal defaults that can hold us back without us even having a clue.
First up, we've got magical thinking. Think about wearing your lucky socks to a big meeting. I mean, it seems totally heartless, right? But what's really going on is your brain is getting cause and coincidence all mixed up. You're basically outsourcing your logic to plain old superstition.
And this is the real difference. A truly intelligent mind doesn't just jump on a connection between two things. It stops, it takes a breath, and asks, okay, but where's the actual proof? It's all about separating a gut feeling from a hard fact.
And you can see how this leads right into our next point, the lure of conspiracies. Look, conspiracies are so tempting because they offer these simple, dramatic answers to incredibly complex problems. It's a classic mental shortcut. It feels good to have a villain to blame, but it's usually just a way to dodge the hard work of dealing with messy, nuanced reality.
So here's the split. Smart minds, they do the work. They check their sources, they actually look for evidence that contradicts what they believe, and they stay skeptical. On the other hand, less rigorous thinking just goes for the most exciting story. It accepts the first explanation that feels good, emotionally satisfying, whether there are facts to back it up or not.
Okay, another one of these flawed habits is what we call rigid thinking. This is that mental inflexibility where someone shoots down new ideas, not because the ideas are bad, but just because they're new. It's that refusal to change how you do things, even when the world is practically screaming that the old way is broken.
Just think about that quote. That phrase, "that's not how we do things," is basically the anthem of stagnation. Intelligent minds are adaptable. They evolve. Rigid thinkers, they stay put. And as the source material points out, life has a funny way of punishing people who refuse to move. All right, let's move on to our next section, because you'll see how this all starts to build. Now we're going to look at how we act around other people, and maybe even more telling, how we act when we're completely by ourselves.
You know those people who absolutely cannot stand silence? The TV has to be on, or music, or a podcast, just something all the time. That constant need for distraction can actually be a sign of a weakness in mental processing. See, solitude is where we reflect, where we really chew on problems. If you can't even sit with your own thoughts for a couple of minutes, you're not just being social, you're avoiding yourself.
Oh, we have all met this person. They're the loudest one in the room, speaking with absolute certainty about things they clearly know nothing about. They interrupt, they talk a big game, but when you actually listen to what they're saying, there's just nothing there. It's all sizzle and no steak.
And believe it or not, there's a scientific name for this, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a real, documented cognitive bias. Basically, the people who know the least often think they know the most because they don't even have enough knowledge to recognize how little they know.
So here's what it all boils down to. True intelligence is never afraid to say, I don't know. It sees a gap in knowledge as an awesome opportunity to ask questions and learn something new. Fake intelligence sees that same gap as a threat, something to be covered up with a lot of noise and aggression.
And this ties right into our final point for this section, bad listening habits. When someone is constantly interrupting you, or they're just kind of nodding along but you can see their mind is a million miles away, it's a huge sign of weak comprehension. Listening isn't passive, it's an active mental process. It's how we absorb new perspectives. If you can't do it, you're basically slamming the door on one of the main ways we grow.
All right, for our last section, we're diving into habits that have been supercharged by our modern world. Seriously, think of these as kryptonite for the 21st century brain.
I mean, people love to brag about it, don't they? Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep, but it is pure self-sabotage. Skimping on sleep absolutely wrecks your memory, your attention, your ability to make good decisions. Smart people don't treat sleep like a luxury. They guard it. They protect it because they know it's the single most important tool they have for thinking clear.
And get this statistic is just staggering. We're not talking about weeks of being tired, just one single night of bad sleep. Maybe you were scrolling on your phone too late or had a glass of wine too close to bed. It can impair your brain so much that you perform at the same level as someone who's drunk. Seriously, let that sink in.
This question, it's basically the motto of our entire age, isn't it? Our brains are being trained constantly by technology to want instant rewards. A notification, a like, the next episode that just automatically starts playing. We're losing the ability to be patient.
You know, the famous marshmallow test proved this decades ago. The little kids who could wait to get a second marshmallow, instead of just gobbling down the first one right away, ended up having way better outcomes later in life, in school, with their health, with their finances. That ability to put up with a little discomfort now for a bigger reward later, that is a hallmark of intelligence.
And finally, we have doom scrolling and just passive TV binging. Look, the problem isn't relaxing with the show. It's when hours just disappear into this black hole of endless content. Research shows this stuff literally fries our focus. It rewires our brains to just crave constant, easy dopamine hits, which makes real, deep thinking so much harder to do.
Okay, so we've identified a lot of problems, but the most important part of this whole explainer is what's coming next. It's about shifting from just diagnosing the problem to taking action. Because here's the good news. None of this has to be permanent. You might be listening to all of this and, recognizing a few of these habits in yourself. And it's really easy to feel a little discouraged, to think, oh man, is this just who I am? Is my brain stuck like this forever?
Well, the answer is a huge, definitive no. Intelligence is not some fixed thing that you're just born with. Not at all. It's the grand total of your daily mental habits. And the best news of all is that habits can be changed.
Which means the power is 100% in your hands. You can choose to start noticing these patterns. You can choose to take a pause instead of just reacting. You can choose to look for evidence instead of just settling for a good story. The process of rewiring your brain doesn't start tomorrow or next week. It starts right now with the very next choice you make.